So hello. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to see the audience for this wonderful event that we were very looking forward to. We are here to celebrate the publication of the new book, but let me say a few words about our guest first, who is the editor of this book. So, Dr. Svitlana Biedarieva holds a PhD from Curto Institute of Art. She is based in Mexico, but she works extensively globally as a researcher, curator, and art historian. She published multiple articles, edited publications, and also most recently her monogram was published by Palgrave. Its title, I don't want to keep it close to your mouth. Okay, thank you so much. So it was Svitlana also the direction of how to hold the mic. So the new book, Anti-Coloniality and War, the Ukrainian-Russian case, is published in 2025, and Svitlana will talk a little bit about it. But primarily she will present her book in which she served as an editor, and this is the book published by Routledge, really a lavish publication with color photograph. It's titled Art in Ukraine Between Identity Construction and Anti-Colonial Resistance. And Svitlana will talk more about how this book came about. Right now, I think also I want to mention that Svitlana just curated exhibition in Michigan, and it was received very well, so it was a big success. So please join me in welcoming Svitlana. And also practical comment, if you didn't register for parking and you parked somewhere on campus, please use this QR code. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you so much, Elena, for introducing me and for inviting me and for organizing all of this, because this is very important for me to present this book here. And I look forward to a productive discussion about the topics that I will touch upon in my talk. And yeah, it is a pleasure to be here, and thank you everyone for coming to this presentation. So the book is called, as Elena mentioned, Art in Ukraine Between Identity Construction and Anti-Colonial Resistance. It was published in November 2024, and this book gathered perspectives of a variety of Ukrainian art historians, curators, art critics on the topics of Ukrainian contemporary art following the year 2004 and ending in the year of the book, when the book was published in the year 2024. So covering 2 decades of development of Ukrainian contemporary art. I will further touch upon why there was this precise timeline selected, but now for the moment, sorry, how can I move the slides? Okay, thank you. Yeah, first I would like to just give this book. We have just one copy available today, but please have a look at the book and see by yourself, because of course the kind of physical object is much more something much more tangible than its electronic version. So I would like to start with the endorsement that Professor Miroslava Mudrak from Ohio State University gave to this book. And she said that she called this volume a product of work that is of Ukrainian artists, activists, and a cohort of academic scholars who are a generation untainted by the trauma of imperialist ideology, freed of entrenched Russian narratives, and absent of the slightest nostalgia for a bygone Soviet era. While I appreciate this perspective that Professor Mudak takes on this volume, locating in this kind of new generation of Ukrainian thinkers and writers, I would like to highlight that actually what united and what was the primary impulse and primary motivation behind this volume was rather an intention to collaborate within a diversity of perspectives from scholars, art critics, and curators of rather different ages. Some of them more established, some of them emerging scholars who wanted to produce something that would bring something new into the developing field of Ukrainian art history, as art history of Ukrainian contemporary art. So, the preface to the book was written by Professor Vitaly Chernievsky from the University of Kansas, and he highlighted in the preface that it would not be an exaggeration to say that for many the discovery of Ukraine as a nation with agency, strength and skills came as an even greater shock than the brutality and the scale of Russia's invasion. And he wrote this in the context precisely of this year 2022 and the onset of Russian invasion and Ukrainian resistance that undertook different forms. One of them was the form of culture. And this is a very central point for this book because largely it focuses on the topics of identity, as it was, as you can see in its title, interpreted in very different ways by the authors of individual texts, and questions of resistance. But the question of agency actually is central, because agency is something that enables those people working in art production and those people interpreting this art production to create new knowledge. And precisely the focus of this volume was at large scope on this production of new knowledge that appeared in result of resistance and societal processes related to this resistance following 2022. But also, as I will discuss further, these events in art, they were preceded by a whole number of different milestones that began with 2004 Orange Revolutions and this inter-revolutionary period of transformation of Ukrainian society and Ukrainian culture, to the 2014 Euromaidan Revolution and the emergence of collective solidarity that was expressed in art practices, and further with the beginning of Ukrainian resistance to Russian war in 2014. So, as Chernievsky says, art in particular has become an area of rich and diverse combination of aesthetic practice and socially engaged and politically informed knowledge production in Ukraine, as well as by displaced and diasporic Ukrainians. Within this development, we see two directions of movement. On the one hand, scholars moving into art curatorial work and other public activities. On the other, artists upping their theoretical engagement in a variety of projects. So the artistic production of the latest years is characterized largely by these interdisciplinary collaborations, where the limits of each discipline and each particular area of work of every participant are blurred, and which enables this particular type of collaborative projects. In this volume, not only authors contributed their texts with very large extent of engagement, but also the artists, to whom I'm really thankful for contributing their large variety of works from their personal archives. Also, they undertook a very important and central role in the creation of this volume. And Vitaly Chernevsky also mentions such topics as such aspects as epistemic injustice that Ukrainian culture endured for decades, if not centuries, and he analyzes how this epistemic injustice actually converted into epistemic violence following the beginning of the war. And texts engage with these topics of epistemology as something that is central precisely for this for resistance, and that is central precisely for this difficult moment when on one hand we see the artistic processes increasing in their extent, and on the other hand, so of course we see the destructive processes of the war and of violence that are ongoing still on Ukrainian territory. Then he says that one of the book's particularly impactful innovations is the clarity it establishes in the difference between the entangled postcolonial consciousness of the early post-Soviet decades, characterized by hybridity and ambivalence, and the emergent diverse but disentangled decolonial vision then began developing in the aftermath of the Revolution of Dignity of winter 2013-2014, and continued with even greater intensity and on a qualitatively new level in the context of Russia escalating its brutal and criminal aggression since February 2022. And this is something that I will talk about in greater detail now when I talk about my introduction to the book, but this is one of the standpoints for the texts that I currently work on, is this distinction between the post-colonial condition and how Ukrainian art reflected a shift to decolonial situation following 2014, and how this process culminated in 2022, and which implications it had on the form of art production, the methods that artists selected for artistic production, and the content of their works. So this is the table of contents of the book, and I already mentioned the preface by Vitaly Chernevsky, my introduction, and the main part of the book is divided into three parts, which are solidarity, identity, and decoloniality. The first part features a text by Ksenia Noril, who is currently directing the program of CIMIC Fellows at MoMA, and she wrote a text entitled Antagonism and Revolutionary Aesthetics, Ukrainian Contemporary Art Between the Orange Revolution and Euromaidan. And actually it was quite interesting because how we coincided with Ksenia with this text, because it was this moment when, in 2022, when I was having an idea of creating this particular volume, and Ksenia wrote to me and she asked me if I know a good place to publish a text that focuses on art between two revolutions, between Orange Revolution and Euromaidan. And that's how actually this text gave this particular time framework, starting not from Euromaidan but from Orange Revolution, because I agreed with her that this is a time period that in Ukrainian art history that is very much omitted from scholarly study, but which nevertheless is formative for understanding of the processes that came further. And in this text she focuses on the topics of protest art and how His protest art was expressed in the work of Ukrainian art groups that were formed precisely in this decade between 2004 and 2014, as well as she discusses it from a theoretical framework proposed by Ernesto Laclanche and Talmouth, that of agonism and antagonism, and in their role in the formation of collective solidarity. The second text by Ася Biedarieva, an independent Ukrainian art critic and art historian, is called The Mother of All Things, and it focuses on the notion of motherland, its Soviet interpretation, and the ways how Soviet and post-Soviet ideological visions of the notion of motherland in visual culture and in art were reinterpreted and deconstructed by Ukrainian contemporary artists. The text by Jessica Zychowicz, who is the director of Fulbright Ukraine and an art historian, is called From the Ukraine Question and the Woman Question to Self-Determination. Revisiting 1920 and 1930s mass politics, revolution and war, and today's Ukraine. Jessica Zychowicz discussed the work of little-known women artists from Mikhailo Boychuk circle. It was an avant-garde circle from the 1920s, 1930s that developed in Kiev around the figure of Mikhailo Boychuk. And most of the artists belonging to his school were killed in the aftermath of Stalinist repressions, particularly in the year of 1937. And she discusses this double invisibility of being a Ukrainian avant-garde artist in that particular time and being a woman in the art production. And she makes a parallel and a connection to contemporary works by such artists as Oksana Brykhovetsky and Evgenia Belarusets, those who worked with similar topics already in the last decade. So in this way, building this kind of legacy. The topic of identity was discussed by Alexandra Osachya, who is the curator of a museum of Kharkiv School of Photography. In her text, Deconstruction of Post-Soviet Visualities in Contemporary Ukrainian Photography, with examples predominantly from the museum of from the works held in the archive of the Museum of Kharkiv School of Photography. And she discusses it from the perspective of current trends, with kind of very critical approach to this current trends, as for example, the new East aesthetics in photography, and how this notion substitutes that approach that emerged in this post-Soviet space. And I will discuss further, because it's kind of very interesting question to discuss further with examples. So the first part of my presentation is dedicated to more theoretical background of this volume, and then I will go already to case studies for each respective chapter. So we will have more possibility to discuss all of this in detail. So prominent Ukrainian art historian Lisa Loshkina contributed a text which is called Kiev Things Big, Large-Scale Exhibitions and Identity Building in Ukraine in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And she discussed the development of institutional framework for showcasing art, and she discussed it particularly on the examples of the events organized by large-scale institutions such as public culture and museum complex Mstetsky Arsenal, and private art center, Pinchuk Art Center in Kiev. And she argued in this text in quite an interesting way that despite being developed in quite a complicated time of when still there were these kind of repercussions of regionalism, for example, the regionalism of Leonid Kuchma's, President Leonid Kuchma's time, that was part of his some kind of conscious or not that conscious electoral policy in Ukraine. There were these kind of very strong divisions, which were overcome partly by the Orange Revolution, but then which were already completely reinterpreted and rebuilt into something new by Euromaidan. She argues that those large-scale exhibitions, they prepare the ground for the current processes of decolonial disentanglement, for processes of decolonization, and for processes of detachment in art production from post-Soviet influences and from the entire the influence of the entire post-Soviet space. The text by Eva Sulek, who is a fellow at Free University Berlin, is called Observing the Bodies, Examination of Experience of War and Trauma. And she focuses in full on the works from 2022 onwards by that center on the questions of corporeality and body in a time of war violence, and she also discusses gender aspects in which ways female and male bodies are addressed in the works of Ukrainian artists. The text by Katerina Filuk, who was the curator at the Pinchuk Art Center, and now she is working at the University of Palermo, is called Ukrainian Photographers Opting for Truth, from Soviet Documentary Photography to Russo-Ukrainian War Images, where she traces the connection between three generations of Ukrainian photographers, from reportage photography of Soviet photographer Irina Pap, who collaborated with the Izvestia newspaper in the 1970s, to the school of Viktor Marushenko, a Ukrainian photographer who is known for documenting works, who is known for documenting the process of evacuation of people from the Chernobyl zone after the explosion of Chernobyl, and who also is known with his photography series of early 2000s dedicated to the Donbass, and who developed this kind of particular notion of truthfulness in his photography and passed it on to his students, one of who was Konstantin Polishchuk, a Ukrainian photographer who is currently serving on the front line, and who is using the method, modified method already of Viktor Marushenko's school, to document the reality around him on the front line, but with the restrictions that are given by his position. So he cannot document directly people, he cannot document landscapes, but still he works in photography in order to to represent reality in some particular way that represents this heritage of several generations of Ukrainian photographers. The third part, decoloniality, features two texts on landscapes. The first text by Ilya Levchenko, who works at Kiev National University in the name of Taras Shevchenko, is called Rethinking Post-Soviet Landscapes Through Decolonial Art Practices of 2014-2022. And he speaks about turning from landscape as a colonial genre as applied to particular situation of of Ukraine within this framework of Russian colonialism, and turning from this colonial genre to a decolonial landscape. On the example of the ways how Ukrainian contemporary artists address all the topics of landscape and depictions of landscape and in the past, particularly in the Soviet period of working with the topic of socialist realism. Curator Katerina Botanova from Culture Escapes Basel wrote a text, Becoming Local, Decolonial Practices in Visual Art in Postmodern Ukraine, in which she addresses largely the idea of rootedness in the territory from which one is forced to be displaced, but also the ways how this kind of connectedness to landscape is actualized by the traumatizing events of the war. And she discusses it particularly from the perspective of a text by Canadian philosopher Adriana Vachev, who proposed a notion of precisely this discussion. He initiated the discussion on becoming local, or as he puts it in his text, becoming tuteishi, as this particular type of rootedness. And this is also the text that makes this connection to the situation of decoloniality that discussed by Levchenko. And finally, my text, which is called Postcolonial Past to Decolonial Future, Ukrainian Art in the Ages of Revolution and War, 2014-2024, focuses on the works of 5 Ukrainian women artists and the transformation that their artistic practice experienced in the last decade. And it links it precisely to this shift between the postcolonial condition and the decolonial situation. And it traces how the methods, but also the topics that this particular artists work on, how they changed. So this is the full contents of the volume. And now I go to the introduction. The questions that I put in the introduction are the following. How has the postcolonial condition been expressed in Ukrainian culture after 2004? And how has its transitoriness been gradually replaced by decolonial processes following 2014? How has participatory democracy manifested within the art projects realized during the 2 revolutions? How have transformations of identity occurred in the years following the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea? How does art contribute to the interpretation of and resistance to the ongoing destruction and violence? What is the timeline of changes in contemporary Ukrainian art in relation to the chronology of the country's social turmoil? And should we speak of identity at all, beyond ethnic or political? Or should we develop a more nuanced understanding of the underlying causes of unity in the face of military aggression? And this refers to an important question which is very difficult actually to answer, of this notion of identity construction that the title of the book mentions. Many of my colleagues, I had some kind of discussions with them about that. Should we really speak about the topic of identity when there are numerous identities emerging in Ukrainian society, and that represent different aspects of culture within the society, and without being fragmented, but being in a way persisting in exchange. And wouldn't it better actually to speak about agency rather than identity, the possibility to act upon some particular circumstances and to produce some new texts, some new narratives, new knowledge, rather than focusing on this question of identifying oneself. So another essential aspect that was formative for the particular viewpoint of this book was this distinction between anti-colonial processes or anti-colonial resistance, post-colonial condition, and decolonial situation, and that I also develop in my other texts. Post-colonial scholar, one of the fathers of post-colonial theory, Frantz Fanon, once said in one of his famous texts that colonialism fosters segregation, dividing the world and separating territories into compartments. And acting upon this particular quality of colonialism, anti-colonialism resists this segregation and resists this division. But as Ukrainian scholar Marko Pavlishin pointed out in 1992, anti-colonialism is a mirror image of colonialism, which borrows from its methods and worldviews, simply because after being for a long time within the situation of colonialism, there is no other point of reference that anti-colonial expression can take. So it borrows from the methods, and in a way it is very radical and transformative, but also it cannot persist for a long time in this kind of in this radical process. And this anti-colonial resistance or anti-colonial struggle thematically inspires and fuels the subsequent post-colonial transformation. And post-colonial transformation is a much more durable and long and patient process, which works with these elements of the past that being recombined, rethought, and reconsidered, yet it always is rooted in this situation of the past, in the situation of contested memory, of the situation of historical trauma. According to publication by the early 1990s, Ukrainian culture was already fully post-colonial in terms of its creativity, relativity, and pragmatism, developing a binary opposition with the preceding radical anti-colonial struggle. So if you look at the year of this text, it is an article written by Pavlishin in 1992, and it was one of the first reflections on the process of dissolution of Soviet Union and a role of political and social transformations in Ukraine. Starting with the first Ukrainian revolution of 1990, which was called Revolution on the Granite, when in December 1990, a number of students protested in the Maidan Square in Ukraine, and these protests, they were also in a way pushing towards this further detachment and exit of Ukraine from the Soviet Union. And of course it was accompanied in artistic practice by this particular anti-colonial expression, which further led to this rethinking. So as Ukrainian literary scholar who works with this post-colonial perspective, Tamara Khundarova points out this particularly post-colonial condition is, she calls it transit culture. And she says that transit culture is not only a post-colonial phenomenon, but it is also a result of the post-totalitarian cultural memory. It unfolds in a space where there is a sense of the presence of the past in the present. And there is also a threat that the future can be a repetition of the past. So, according to Khundarova, this post-colonial condition is always looking back at the past because of the fear that this traumatic past will return and the traumatic history will repeat. However, she says that this situation, despite of its durability, also needs to be ended and to be transformed at some point into something else. And she puts it as transitoriness has also to be transcended. So my text follows this logic of development and proposes that while the postcolonial condition denotes the situation immediately following the colonial experience and anti-colonial struggle linked to it, taking all the implications of colonialism to reinterpret them, the decolonial situation speaks about the final process of dismantling the colonial narrative and producing new knowledge looking at the present and also looking at the future. And for a starting point for this decolonial situation, I view the year 2014, when first the Euromaidan process were formative for some kind of new understanding of first participatory democracy emerging in the society and the solidarity, new ways of solidarity emerging in the society, and also then the necessity to consolidate in the face of the immediate danger of the beginning of the war and Russian occupation of Crimea and Donetsk and Lugansk regions. As I say here, the resistance to the war's divisive attempts has forged new collective solidarity and reunification while preserving diversity, which is expressed in social processes and art alike. Visual art practices look at the present, as they mark the continuity of narrative covering the disruptions and embody changes experienced by Ukrainian society in the last traumatic decade. So the idea behind this shift to decolonial situation is why to look at the traumas of the past if we can look at the dramatic present, and if we are facing the history unfolding in front of us, and there is an urgent necessity to interpret this history and to somehow acknowledge and comprehend it. So, and this is something that Ukrainian art practices are trying to do. And this explains why artists so actively work in the last 3 years particularly, but also starting from 2014. And there is a huge expansion in different methods, media, and different topics that they focus on. Returning to the statement of Chernyavsky about epistemic injustice about Ukraine, I read that epistemic justice comes not only with the wide recognition of suffering, but also with bringing visibility to the value of what lies beyond the suffering: human dignity, individuality, and capacity to create and produce. Resisting Russia means not only opposing its neo-colonial attempts on Ukrainian territory, but also preserving, restoring, reconstructing, and expanding Ukrainian culture. The new language of speaking about Ukraine and its art, both locally and internationally, should be not the language of trauma, but the language of regeneration. And that's why in many of the texts that are focusing on, particularly on decoloniality, there is this element that focuses that is either very human-centric, or it focuses on the landscape, because the landscape provides this environment, it provides this basis for regeneration. And regeneration is, of course, also lies at the basis of knowledge production. So, turning now to the examples, I start with the text of Ksenia Nuril that focuses on the period between 2004 and 2014 and artistic practices that developed in this particular period. And sorry. Okay, and she proposes this very interesting work called The Life of President by Ksenia Hnilitska, which was made in 2013, is a digital work, and it focuses on the figure of Viktor Yanukovych, who was president of Ukraine at that time, and depicts him as an Orthodox saint in this classic traditional way of житие that depicts the different stages in life of an Orthodox saint, from birth to different important events in his life that formed him as some particular figure of veneration. And she depicts this moment when of the youth of Viktor Yanukovych, his criminal activities, his imprisonment and his release from the prison, and then subsequently the moment when he became a president. And it ends precisely with this moment of the decision of whether to sign the agreement with the European Union or turn towards the union with Russia, and so on. This particular work, of course, is very ironic, and it represents also the ambition of a particular government of Viktor Yanukovych at that time. It reflects on the particular event of the summer 2013, when there was a celebration of 1025 years of the baptizing of Kievan Rus, and there was a Russian delegation arriving from Moscow, and there was Putin also visiting Kiev together with all these heads of Moscow Patriarchy, and all this looked like this particular moment when this colonial intention of Russia became very apparent, and therefore the selected stylistics of her work refers to this Orthodox iconography. But how it was pointed out also from by one of the members of audience in one of my presentations, also it has this kind of very socialist realist touch to the ways the artist depicts all these events, and also this links to the figure of her father, Alexander Khmelnytsky, who was an important artist from late Soviet unofficial art, Ukrainian art, and this also kind of builds upon his legacy of deconstructing this socialist realist visual aspects in artistic practice. The work by Anna Zviagintseva is one of the photographs from the event Gap series that the artist took following the events of the Euromaidan, and she took photos of those objects that served as some kind of peripheral evidence of sudden exposure to violence of Ukrainian society, which didn't experience this level of violence until then. And she divides each photograph into two parts with the white line. And here we see that from the right side there is this building of trade unions in Kiev, which was burned in January 2014 in the aftermath of the attack of pro-governmental forces. And on the left side, there is this completely untouched building, as if the life continues, and everything is kind of normal. And the artist highlights this ambivalence of the situation, of sudden immersion into crisis, and the denial of recognizing the very fact of this immersion. These are some of the examples of Ksenia Nuril's, from the Ksenia Nuril's text. She goes much beyond these examples when she discusses it from the point of view of emergence of artistic groups in that period, which was also very important and formative for precisely the development of socially engaged and politically engaged art practices in Ukraine. And here I was trying to make some kind of highlights from similarly Art Museum own collection, and I selected this works, this wonderful painting by Valeria Trubina called Bowing from 1985, so it was already perestroika time, and this work by Larissa Rezun and Konstantin Zvizdachotov called Unity is Power from 1990, and I wanted just to make this precisely this connection with the work of depicting Viktor Yanukovych within this very Byzantine setting, and we can see how precisely this mentioned legacy of Alexander Khmelnytsky on the work of Ksenia Khmelnytska also coincided with work of one of his contemporaries, where the Byzantine aesthetics appears as a particular method of expression of resistance and as a particular decolonial expression. And he in the work Unity is Power, I think it is very interesting how the artist used it ironically, and particularly taking into account that Larissa Rezun is one of prominent representatives of Odessa conceptualism, while Konstantin Zvizdachotov is the representative of Moscow conceptualism, and they worked and they worked together in the 1980s in Moscow, when there was this Mukhomore group, and then there was kind of precisely the development of this young wave of Moscow conceptualism there. But there is a certain end to this unity, which was displayed precisely in the dissolution of Soviet Union, as well as in the detachment of this artistic collaboration between Rezun and Zvizdachotov in most practical ways, and which we can see that now also in this reconceptualization of how Odessan conceptualism is divided from Moscow conceptualism, while it was for decades regarded very close and very interconnected phenomenon. So at least this is my vision of these particular works. Of course, I'm more specialist in Ukrainian contemporary art of the last decades, following 1991, but it would be very interesting, for example, to hear your opinions, because of course the acquaintance here with the collection of similar art museum is not comparable with my analysis. Okay, the text of Svitlana Biedarieva features works by, it focuses on the notion of motherland and how this notion was reinterpreted following 2014, and she presents the work of Lada Ralko, Longing for a Motherland, and this work directly reflects on the event of Euromaidan Russian invasion in the Donbass and in Crimea, and it has originally the title in Russian, Toska po Rodine, which highlights this reference of the particular connotations that this word carries as some kind of hierarchized entity that is inherited from the Soviet period and the Soviet understanding of this particular word. And we can see the figure of motherland as some kind of female figure with two conjoined twins tearing it apart. And it doesn't have a head. And generally in this violent image, as Biedarieva interprets it, it reflects on the logic of revolution, as Ukrainian scholar Olga Brukhevetsky proposed that revolution is headless, because it's a collective action. It is both decapitated and decapitating, because of course it doesn't have one single person who guides it, but also it leads to a violent transformation. And Biedarieva interprets this image precisely from this point of view. And of course, this is also the reference to this division that occurs within the post-Soviet space, which is violent, and which this post-Soviet space being fragmented and torn apart, together with the concept of motherland. The work of Katerina Lysovenko, called Untitled, from 2022, was created just 2 days before the onset of full-scale invasion on February 22 of 2022, and she represents also the figure of motherland, with particular reference to the statue of Motherland, that is a very prominent sculpture situated in Kiev, which represents a woman with a sword standing on one of the hills of Dnipro River. And also it has the references to Jean Delacroix's liberty guiding the people. Of course, we see here the iconography of Madonna with a child, and the particular fact that both the woman and the child are showing this gesture, which the artist interprets as, the author of the text interprets as some particular gesture of resistance, which gives agency both to the mother and the child, and represents this kind of collective unity in the face of the immediate danger or immediate threat. In this moment of tension, when it was not clear how the events will turn and whether the full-scale invasion will occur. And she proposes that this has this very different viewpoint from the decapitated and mutilated figure of motherland, that is a very kind of hierarchical one, and towards the motherland that has agency, but also gives agency and enables others. So this is also, I found some works from the Similarly Museum collection, and to the right, what called my attention was this image by Yuri Avakumov called Motherland, and this is precisely this motherland that Biedarieva talks about, this kind of Soviet perspective on it, a motherland that we need to look up to, and that is kind of dominating our viewpoint, is dominating our horizon. And the other work is by Leonid Lam, Mourning of the Motherland. And as I read, actually this depiction of a labor camp near Rostov-on-Don, it was related precisely to the artist's own experience, who spent 3 years in Soviet prisons, and he was depicting this particular experience. So this is a restrictive and dominating motherland that is being fragmented in Vlada Relko's work. So the text by Jessica Zhelekhovich focuses on this particular work of Oksana Pavlenko, which is called Women's Meeting. And this work is from the special fund of the National Museum of Art of Ukraine that has been largely abandoned in the special fund for many decades, following the repression of Mikhailo Boychuk's circle in 1937, when the artist himself and his nearest circle of colleagues and students were killed, And most of their mural works, because they were monumentalist artists, were destroyed. And those remaining, by some miracle, were either small-scale paintings, and among them there was this painting of Oksana Pavlenko. They were all in horrible state when independence arrived, and the museum started exploring these particular holdings. Some of these canvases were without stretchers, and they were rolled one upon another, and they were having all possible damage, but they survived. So Jessica Zachovich speaks about the parallel of the position of women in Soviet society and the position of Ukraine within Soviet space. And she speaks about this turning from the subaltern position to the topic of self-determination, and viewing art as this particular method and a tool for this self-determination. And then further she explores it through a row of examples from Ukrainian contemporary feminist artists, including Oksana Bryukhovetska and Evgenia Belarusets and several others, who precisely work with this idea of going out from the shadow of oppression through a variety of artistic practices. The work the text by Alexandra Osacha focuses on the photographic work of Sasha Kurmas from the Wasted Youth series, and this directly relates to also to the discussion on the Motherland statue that I mentioned when speaking about Biederieva's text. This is the monumental complex right next to the statue that features Soviet soldiers during the Second World War going into attack, and then the artist places a female figure, a nude female figure, in between these stone soldiers, and this human figure with all this vulnerability, all the exposure of to any kind of threat, is both as if trapped between these monuments and protected by them. So this work also focuses on some particular ambivalence of the situation of dealing with the totalitarian past, and returning to the totalitarian past as Tamara Hunderova speaks about this transit culture, for example. So this is the visualization of this particular situation of inability to break with the past, being completely immersed into it, but also being very having this possibility of leaving it at some point. And the project by Evgeny Nikiforov discusses further this monumentalist aspect of dealing with the past and the monuments of the past with an entire series called On Republic's Monuments that the artist took between 2015 and 2018. The dates are not correct here on the slide, I'm afraid, but it was after Ukrainian parliament accepted very polemical set of laws called dehumanization laws, where the revisions of the past were considered as the fight with monuments referring to communist ideology, so Soviet symbols, and so on. And a wave of dismantling and toppling of monuments, defacing them, reworking them into something else, covered Ukrainian cities. Nikiforov traveled across different cities from the east to the west, from the south to the north, and he documented this project, which was of course very critical about calling to think what we consider the legacy and what is the necessary part of this legacy to preserve, and what is something that we can discard. And this particular monument of Friedrich Engels, following this project, found a second life after being thrown away into this next to the storage in Poltava region. British artist Phil Collins picked it up and brought it to Manchester and installed it back on the pedestal in Manchester in 2017. And Manchester is a city that is traditionally linked to the biography of Friedrich Engels, because that's where he spent his good part of his of his youth, after he was 23 or 24 when he arrived to Manchester, and which is considered also formative for his particular thinking. So it's kind of interesting how monuments and ideas are reconsidered and recontextualized in different environments, and how they how new aspects of them are highlighted when the situation changes. The text by Alisa Loshkina focuses on several art spaces, including those of Mistetsky Arsenal and Pinchuk Art Center. And here in this slide, the images are merely illustrative that I selected for the exhibitions that she mentions, because the text in the book, that is the only text in the book that doesn't have images. She speaks in particular about this exhibition Grand and Great in Mistetsky Arsenal in 2013, which coincided with the event that I already mentioned of the baptizing of Kiev and Rus, when Putin and the delegation and all the Moscow Patriarchy arrived. And a big event was supposed to happen in Mistetsky Arsenal with this exhibition, which gathered main treasures from Ukrainian museums. And also it gathered works of several Ukrainian contemporary artists. But something happened. And what happened was highly irregular. There was a work by Ukrainian artist Volodymyr Kuznetsov, who was invited to paint the mural related to some kind of social context surrounding all this event. What he painted was key representatives of Ukrainian government, Ukrainian administration, alongside key representatives of Moscow Patriarchy in hell, boiling in a pot. So this work, of course, didn't go along as expected by the curators of this exhibition, and this work was censored. It was painted over, and this created a huge public controversy and exposed all these vulnerabilities of Viktor Yanukovych's regime that actually was kind of very telling about all the wrong things that was going on with politically and socially in Ukraine when there was a possibility of such direct censorship. And this was July 2013, and the events of Euromaidan, reflecting on yet more of different controversies and difficulties, occurred already in November 2013. So in a way, this exhibition was an indicator of approaching events, protest events. And also she talks very interestingly about the development of Pinchuk Art Center and its contribution to large-scale exhibitions and the globalization of Ukrainian art practices. The text by Eva Sulik has focused on corporeality and gender roles in the time of war. And here we see a work by Kinder Album, which is called The Burial. And we see 3 nude women who are carrying a black bag. This work was painted in the aftermath of the killings in Bucha in 2022. And we see that the victims of these killings are represented in this kind of very abstract way, but they're represented as a burden that is collectively carried by these very vulnerable and nude female figures as representing this collective burden that of violence that Ukrainian society had to carry and to endure due to Russian aggression. The work by Lesia Homenko, Max and the Army, is part of a series where she depicts her husband. These are kind of large-scale paintings, more than human size. And in this series of works, she depicts his transformation from a civilian to a military when he was enlisted into the army. And she shows how his expression of face, his appearance, his clothes, his posture change, and how this kind of mark of being militarized is kind of imprinted onto his figure. And Eva Sulik finds it very interesting that while the depiction of men in Ukrainian wartime art are largely linked to this idea of militarization, the depiction of women are largely linked to the idea of embodied violence, because women are, according to Eva Sulik, are more fragile in the times of war, and they are often become direct objects of rape and different atrocities. And in this way, she sees that Ukrainian art reflects this gender distinction. I have I have a few more slides that I would like to show, because I would like to cover all the texts that are presented in the book, if you don't mind. How much time do you have? 5 minutes. Okay, good. Yeah, I have. Yeah, because I think it would be fair really to cover the text of all the authors presented in the volume. So the text by Katerina Filuk focuses on the photography of Viktor Marushenko from the Chernobyl series, and as the ways how he presented this new ways of representing truthfulness in photography, but also kind of empathic attitude in photography in his works, and links it to the legacy of Soviet reportage photographer Irina Pap. And on the right we can see the works by Konstantin Polishchuk from his Night Watch series, where we can see that he doesn't depict the landscape, he doesn't depict some concrete figures. Instead, he depicts the objects that are least representative from all the environment that surrounds the soldier on the front line. And he focuses on the starry sky, for example, as some kind of utopian environment that creates this new feeling of truthfulness and creates some kind of also side evidence of all these conditions in the front line, which are nevertheless can be found kind of more depth than the reality, the immediate reality permits. The text by Ilya Levchenko focuses on the work by several Ukrainian artists, and it starts with the work of Mykola Burachek, who was socialist realist paintings. His work, The Road to the Collective Farm, 1937, is painted in this kind of classical socialist realist way with linear perspective and so on. Further, it was a reinterpreted by Ukrainian artist Ladana Konechna in her project Perspective Reduction, with a photo of which I didn't include here on the slides. And she takes isolated elements from these socialist realist paintings, some kind of graphic lines, separate shapes, and she takes them apart. As well, she takes apart the color, or sometimes she removes the color completely, leaving just black and white trace. And she shows how this socialist realist style and its linear perspective can be viewed from a variety of different other perspectives. The continuation and the next step of it is a series by Katya Buchatska that focus that doesn't have, as far as I know, kind of a unified title, but the artist presents works, each of which has a title according to the pigment that she used in this particular image. And she creates pigments from the soil, from different places that were affected by Russian invasion in the spring of 2022. So she has Mushroom Umbra, Hostomel Blue, Hostomel Red, Chikrak Black, and so on. Those all come from the territories that were either affected directly by aggression or are now occupied. And she mixes them with oil and wax, and she creates this abstract painting, which is already not a depiction of landscape, but a landscape by itself, which can be, which provides us kind of very direct touch to the land that produced this particular pigment. And here I will discuss the works by Arsen Savadov and Georgy Senchenko from Similarly Art Museum collection, the Old and New Gardens, but I don't have time, unfortunately, but we can see that there is some kind of ruin and something emerging from this ruin. So there is this also very double-sided process ongoing here in these images. So Katerina Botanova focused also on landscape and becoming local, rootedness into landscape. The painting by Katerina Alinik, Everything is Okay Underground, there is always something to do, precisely focuses on this idea that of the soil as given birth to something, given possibility of growth and regeneration, as well as covering and burying many things that are dead or are dangerous, because in some other images Alinik includes, for example, hand grenades from which flowers are sprouting. And Katerina Alinik is herself from Luhansk. So this set of large-scale paintings manifest her linking to the particular landscape, and which she embeds, which she imbues with this kind of, with this capacity of covering all these things that are dead, and at the same time regeneration. The work by Alevtina Kahidze from the Invasion series are part of the series of 13, and the artist depicts herself sitting in the cellar in her house during the invasion in the spring 2022, and thinking and making parallels between invasions in the human world and in the vegetative realm. Thinking about invasive plants and the ways how they attack the territory of other plants. And she finds some kind of parallels, but also differences, that the plant invasion is more durable, yet it is less aggressive. And she incorporates also this into her larger life story. So here I wanted to talk also about the works from Similarly collection, but I'm pretty sure that the research on the collection here can help cover these topics in a larger extent that I can do in this presentation. So finally, my text, Alevtina Kahidze and Piotr Arminovsky. created a 360-degree film called Invasions 1, 2, 3. And it is a film where the artist starts narration next to the grave of her mother, with whom she was in touch only by phone between 2014 and 2019 due to the fact that Kahidze's mother was in the occupied territory of the Donetsk region. And she was narrating to her experiences and all the things that she witnessed to her daughter. And Kahidze created a project called Through the War with Strawberry Andreevna, based on these reportages from her mother. And unfortunately, her mother died in 2019 when crossing the border between occupied territory and Ukraine. The film starts as a tribute to her mother, and then the artist gives a tour around the Kiev region that carried at that moment the marks of the effects of the invasion, with damaged and burned buildings. She interviews different people who are narrating their eyewitness stories. And the peculiarity of this film is that the viewer can select the perspective and to either to look at the extent of damage or look into the face of these witnesses of violence, or just to look into some trees or the sky or the other undamaged buildings, avoiding this direct connection with the ruin. However, this choice is illusionary because anyway the gaze of the viewer returns to the destruction that occurred in the place. And precisely in my text, I discuss how Alevtina turned from this reportage practice related to her mom to direct eyewitness report, which provides this certain way of ambiguity in it. The project of Jana Kadyrova, entitled, in 2014 presented the map of Ukraine cut out of a burnt wall of a factory with Soviet wallpaper from the other side, kind of yellow Soviet wallpaper, with this piece representing Crimea falling apart. In 2022, the artist began adding actual rubble and shrapnel from Russian shellings into this installation, in a way fragmenting even more this map of Ukraine, and also adding this kind of ready-made objects that serve as direct evidence of violence. The theoretical background that I discussed here in brief is further discussed in my other book, which is my monograph that was recently published by Belgrave, which is called Anti-Coloniality and War, the Ukrainian-Russian case. And there I speak not as much about history of art, but more within some kind of wider literary and cultural studies. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk and to present, and I look forward to any comments or questions. Thank you.
Yes, unfortunately we are quite out of time. I cannot switch on the microphone. Yes, I hope you can hear me. And
yes, actually now it's working.
So if you have any questions, please pose them, and I can give you the microphone. Thank you so much, Svitlana,
For this presentation.
Hello.
Oh, yeah, please hold it like
Okay. I was wondering if you had any recommendations for resources online or physically for someone to look into Ukrainian art or to be able to research the history of it.
There is not so much published about Ukrainian contemporary art in general. But there is, for example, this new book of Alisa Loshkina called Art in Ukraine, published by Thompson Hudson, I think. And this is a good, it provides a good overview of artistic practices, covering not only recent ones, but also the 20th century. It's difficult to say. there is quite a few of volumes that could be of interest, but I think what kind of period are you interested in? More like an overview of different periods or the contemporary?
I think maybe a general overview.
A general overview. Okay, there is also an edited volume that I published in 2021, which is called Contemporary Ukrainian and Baltic Art, Political and Social Perspectives. And Olena contributed a wonderful text about apocalyptic perestroika there. And this also could be a resource, and it brings this kind of like comparative perspective with development of art in Baltic countries. Yeah, and there are quite a few sources, and if you search for them, you can also find something maybe unexpectedly interesting. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, we definitely can continue the conversation. Meanwhile, enjoying some refreshments, and you can come and ask your question directly. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Svitlana, for your talk.